Good afternoon. I'm going to call to order our first meeting of the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee for 2015. Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome back. I am Cam Gordon. I'm chair of the committee, and I'm joined today by Vice Chair Andrew Johnson, Elizabeth Glidden, and Lisa Bender. That is a quorum of the committee, so we can conduct our business. We have 6 items on our agenda today that are on consent and 1 discussion item where there'll be a presentation. I'll read through the consent items, and then I think I'll move the last consent item to the end so we can do that as part of our discussion. First one is to refer to staff a staff direction that was moved forward through the budget process, directing Neighborhood and Community Relations Department to provide guidelines for expenditures of the Consolidated TIF Fund for neighborhood revitalization purposes, using existing and previous policies, practices, and precedents, such as special uses like the Affordable Housing Commercial Corridor Reserve Fund. A key feature that should be included from past guidelines is the requirement for neighborhood review and sponsorship. The guidelines should be specific for intended uses, be they special initiatives or larger scale activities, such as large tract development activities. Staff is to present recommendation back to the council no later than May 31st, 2015. It's my intention and hope that this will be incorporated in with previous staff directions from our committee about TIF funding and will be included in the work that the commission does on that as well. The second item is authorizing the NCR director to issue the request for proposals for the 2015 One Minneapolis Fund, and authorizing the execution of all necessary contracts associated with that, and also authorizing the Neighborhood and Community Engagement Commission to review the proposals for funding from the 2015 One Minneapolis Fund and make recommendations to the City Council on funding awards. And the full RFP is linked to the agenda. The third item is receiving and filing the report on the 2015 Neighborhood Community Relations Audit and Financial Review Schedule for neighborhood organizations. This just outlines which neighborhoods will have an audit and which will be reviewed in 2015, so people can see what's coming. The fourth item is accepting estimated revenue in the amount of $25,000 from UCARE to address environmental factors affecting children with asthma and increasing the appropriation and revenue estimate by the same amount, and that will be referred to the Ways and Means Committee. The sixth item is accepting $186,000 from UCARE for 2015 operating expenses for the UCARE Skyway Senior Center. That will also be referred to Ways and Means. The sixth item is our Youth Violence Prevention Executive Committee appointments, approving the following mayoral appointments and reappointments to the Youth Violence Prevention Executive Committee for 2-year terms expiring December 31st. I will move that to the end of the agenda so we can do that after our presentation on our Youth Violence Prevention Program. So now, unless somebody wants to pull anything else off, I would like to move the first 5 consent items forward for approval. Seeing no comments, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. The consent items carry. And then let's move forward to our discussion item. We are going to hear about the Youth Violence Prevention Program and our annual report. And I'm not sure if who's going to, Ms. Cotton or Ms. Kant's going to start this. Okay. Welcome. Good afternoon. Are you all set to go? Well, take all the time you need.
Okay, there we are. Are you all able to see it on your screens as well?
Yes, we can see that. Thank you very much.
Is it linked?
This is not.
I'm sorry.
This is not linked yet, but we'll have it linked after the meeting.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I am Sasha Cotton, the Youth Violence Prevention Coordinator for the city, housed in the Health Department, and thank you for having me. I'll get started right away with our PowerPoint presentation. I'd like to first talk a little bit about the blueprint. Thank you. My colleague, Josh Schaefer, is helping me to make the presentation a little prettier.
Thank you.
So the blueprint, as most of you probably already know, is the guiding document that we use to help guide the work of the youth violence prevention efforts in the city. The health department leads those efforts, and we're focused on planning and service coordination with jurisdictional partners. We provide technical assistance to community-based agencies and data analysis and new program development to address service gaps. The vision, which is in the plan, is a unified city where all youth can be safe and thrive, and our mission is to prevent youth violence through comprehensive approaches that support the development and success of youth and families in their communities, encourage strong partnerships among organizations, and are culturally grounded and asset-based. We operate with 5 main goal areas, which are to foster violent-free social environments, promote positive opportunities and connections to trusted adults, intervene with youth and families at the first sign of risk, and restore youth who have gone down the wrong path. Our last one, which is the newest addition to our goal areas, is to protect children and youth from violence in the community. And this is just a little overview of our governance structure. So as you can see on the horizontal side is my position, the Youth Violence Prevention Coordinator, and then the other governance structure is our 17-member advisory council, which we'll be talking about a little later. The health department, which has a core team of folks, including myself, our youth development coordinator, our youth intervention coordinator, as well as our leadership, who help to coordinate those efforts. And then our multi-jurisdictional team, which is really made up of city partners, as well as some outside agencies to help guide the work, including Hennepin County and newly our Parks Board. Minneapolis has been identified as a national leader on the issue of youth violence prevention and has held that status for many years across the country. There's been numerous articles written about our work, specifically looking at our public health approach and using that lens to address the issue. In 2012, one of our major notorieties has been the inclusion of Minneapolis in the National Forum on Youth Violence Prevention. And the National Forum on Youth Violence Prevention is a network of communities and federal agencies that work together to share information and build local capacity to prevent and reduce youth violence. In 2010, it was established by President Obama, and in 2012, we were invited as the second cohort of cities to join the forum. It is a relatively exclusive designation. 5 additional cities were just included but haven't been formally added to the list. And in 2013, as a part of the National Forum, we did update our blueprint from its original version from 2008. So quickly, these are the other cities that are currently in the National Forum: Boston, Camden, Chicago, Detroit, Memphis, New Orleans, Philadelphia, Salinas, and San Jose. I'll move into our annual update for 2014 and just kind of goes through some of the month-by-month activities. So in January, I was hired. Tomorrow is my official anniversary date. So it's been 1 year of moving the work forward. Really excited and pleased to be here with you all and addressing this important issue. The first real event that we had was in April, and that was recognizing National Youth Violence Prevention Week. We held a variety of public opportunities for the community to come out and learn more about youth violence prevention, and particularly looking at it from a public health lens. In April, Minneapolis was also selected as one of 2 cities to be highlighted during the month of March for the National Speak Up Tip Line, which is a tip line that we are involved with that allows young people to make anonymous reports of acts of violence that they know are going to be happening in their community. It also acts as a referral site, so young people can call this line if they know that they have a friend who's in trouble or they need more information about programming. It will link them directly to 311 in the event that it's a non-emergency, and also to 211. So
could I just ask a question about that?
yes.
Do we get a report from Speak Up about how many calls we get a month, what they're related to, how many are to report guns, and that kind of information?
We get a report about the emergency-based calls that we get. We don't get a call about the ones that an update about the ones that they refer to 211 and 311, which is what I'm particularly interested in. We've been working with them, and they're actually changing their format, so there's a little bit of a halt because the server that they're going to be using will be changing in 2015. So we hope to actually make better use of that service moving forward. The numbers have been, in between 1 and 5 calls a month for an emergency base that our staff from either the public schools or the police can actually respond to and try to act on. I know with our partners in the schools, there have been 2 incidents in the last year that they felt like they were able to address with the Speak Up line. So we do feel like it's a tool that's been helpful in helping to prevent some incidents that could have gotten out of control.
Do they tell us the total number of calls then a month?
We
Or
do
just emergency calls?
just emergency calls, which to me, I mean, it's great to know when there's a major incident, but I think from a programming standpoint, what would be more helpful is to know what kids are calling in for referrals on. And so with the new system, they're hoping to be able to give us that kind of a breakdown in 2015. So we have a conference call scheduled with them in February to talk about the relationship moving forward.
Well, I would really appreciate that too.
In April, we had our second annual Peacemaker Award, which is hosted by the City of Minneapolis, Minneapolis Public Schools, and Peacemaker Foundation. It's focused on honoring students and educators committed to building peace in the Minneapolis community. This year, we elevated a little bit more. We got some good press coverage, and also were able to recognize all of the nominees. So I believe we had approximately 19 nominees, and historically, we've invited just those who have been awarded the recognition. So we really wanted to highlight everyone who was doing such great work. It was really difficult to make a decision. So many of the people who were nominated were doing exceptional things in the community. And so we look forward to hosting that again this year. I hope to make that be a keystone in our National Forum on Youth Violence Prevention Week as we move forward. So moving on into the summer months, which is a big time of the year for us to gear up for programs and making sure that young people have activities to participate in when they're out of school. We started the pop-up park this summer, which was a mobile location for young people to spend time at in between 4 and 9. They rotated locations and were available 6 days a week over 6 weeks in the summer. It was a partnership with the park board and continuing to refine it, but it was really well received by the community. We got a lot of positive response from community. We hosted them primarily in our hotspots, areas that have been identified by the police, and really looking at an opportunity to engage the community in pro-social activity. So focusing on the positive and not the negative of our communities. In June and July, we hosted a series of police and youth dialogues. We were graciously offered the opportunity to work with the police department, and they offered up a couple of officers who were interested in working with young people in North Minneapolis, and they met weekly on Tuesdays. We provided some food for them, and they went through our BUILD curriculum, which is a curriculum that's focused on gang intervention, but really builds a lot of leadership skills along the way. And so we had a great facilitator, Callie Aguilar, who is very active in the community, who was able to walk the participants through a great couple of weeks. I think the sessions went for 9 weeks. So we got a good response from that, from the youth who participated, as well as from the officers, and we're looking forward to discussing the possibility of doing that again next year, or this year now. And from July to October, we did our micro grants that we always traditionally do for youth violence prevention. This year, we did rename them. They're traditionally been called Summer 612. And as the new coordinator, I've really been wanting to streamline our work and identify it closely aligned with the blueprint, since that is the document that guides our work. So it was rebranded as the Blueprint Approved Micro Grant, trying to use that same language. We funded 6 programs. That was Emerge Build Leaders, Youth Care, from Little Earth. We funded, of course, all of the names are evading me right now. They should be written down. We funded Oasis of Love. We funded Courageous Hearts. And we funded, oh, of course, the last one is, We Win Institute. So those were the 6 agencies that were funded. We had a variety of different kinds of programs that each of the entities did with young people, but they were all youth-led and really focused on building bridges in communities that are violent-free. So it was a great opportunity for young people to be involved and at the leadership of these projects. They were spread between North and South Minneapolis pretty evenly, and so we had a really great summer with these kinds of activities, and these are just a couple of the highlighted events. So each organization was asked to do a series of groups with young people, but to also have at least one major event. And so what you're seeing are some of the pictures from the major events that each of the organizations held, or a couple of the organizations held. Some of the programs that we implement that are done routinely with the health department are the oversight and management of our juvenile supervision center, our youth victimization data analysis, Inspiring Youth, which is a case management and support program for young people who are at risk of either victimization or perpetration of violence. We offer parent education, and then the Minneapolis Build training that I spoke to a little bit earlier. I wanted to go a little bit over some of the data. As you can see, we had a peak in 2006 with our youth who are involved in guns and juveniles as victims, and since then we've had a decline. 2008 marks the year that we actually implemented the blueprint, and we've considerably down. So we do feel like the blueprint has been effective in helping us to address in a more coordinated effort youth violence prevention. This is a decreasing homicides that are occurring within the city, and one of the things that we know that we need to focus on is our 18 to 24-year-olds, especially as it relates to homicide and violent crime. Our blueprint speaks specifically to 24 and under, and the numbers for our under 18 victims, while any loss of life is horrific, the numbers are relatively low. But for our victims 18 to 24, our numbers are significantly higher, and that's certainly an area that we want to work on next year, or this year. I keep forgetting that it's 2015. It happened quickly. Public perception about youth violence in Minneapolis. I felt like it was important to draw this comparison. So overall, we've had a pretty consistent perception citywide that in between 80 and 85% of our, actually 82 and 85% of our residents feel that they are safe in their neighborhoods. However, when we look specifically by community, we can see that there are some great disparities, especially as we look at Camden, Near North, Phillips, and Powderhorn. And so we know that those are some areas that we need to have some concentrated effort in, and while we'll continue to do citywide work, we certainly want to make sure that we're addressing the areas where people feel the greatest need for initiatives around violence prevention. This is our total budget for 2015. As you can see, we have a mix of city funding that goes towards our budget as well as state and federal forum dollars. And then the plans for 2015, one of the most exciting things that we're working on right now is developing a capacity building institute for small youth serving agencies. What we've learned in the past when we've accepted grant applications has been that many of the programs we're familiar with on the ground that are doing great work often don't have the skill and capacity to do the grant writing and program development to get approved for funding from the city or from other funding agencies. And so we really saw a need to work with our programs on their program development, and that's something that we're hoping to get up and running in 2015. The other piece is to look at early childhood exposure to violence through a task force. We know that violence is a learned behavior, and so the earlier that we can get out in front of that problem, the sooner the better, we feel. So we're putting together a task force of experts on childhood exposure to violence in hopes that we can develop a plan and addendum to the blueprint concerning those issues. We, as always, want to continue with community engagement, and we'll strive, particularly in the spring and summer, to do a lot of community engagement and to be very visible in the community around the issue of youth violence prevention. And then, as I mentioned, we're in the process of developing several addendums to help enhance our current blueprint, looking specifically at communities that we've had challenges with working with or that we know have an increased need. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on making it through your first year here.
Thank you. You've been a great asset to our work. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Johnson has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions for you. The first is, especially with our multi-jurisdictional partners with MPS on board, are we working with them to help incorporate conflict resolution skills into the classroom to teach youth, especially when they're really young, how to resolve their problems early on?
Sure. I would say, are doing that in two different ways. So with the National Forum, we have a program called Positive Behavior Intervention, and I'm going to defer to my colleague for the S acronym, support, which works on enhancing that positive behavior in school climates and trying to change the climate. As it pertains to restorative justice, my colleague Josh is currently working with the city on the diversion program that we've been sort of restructuring, and certainly restorative justice is a model that practices. So we are involved in two fronts.
And I think restorative justice is a really great model, especially when something happens where maybe a child shoplifts or what have you. And then obviously creating more positive environments in the school is great. I just wonder to what degree there's that formal effort really working with students in teaching and coaching these skills very preventatively early on, and if that's something that hopefully could be a focus maybe of the work or could be something that the group works on.
I certainly think that it's something that we can be more inclusive of. I agree restorative justice practices are really important. I'm a certified restorative justice facilitator myself, so I certainly believe in the practice of the work, and I think in 2015 we'll certainly be working with our partners to talk more about that, and we'll get back to you.
Great, thank you. And my other piece here is, and this was recently in the news, that Chicago saw a 43% decrease in violent crime for high schoolers when given jobs. I know we have many great programs in our city, such as Step Up, just to name one of several, that are working on that. But I'm wondering if we have a sense of this big, full picture on it, because certainly crime has a cost, and if we're going to spend the money on, for instance, policing or on our criminal justice system, can we instead spend that money on the front end on things that are going to really benefit our community much, much more than addressing a crime, and instead decrease that crime and contribute back in through the economy, through teaching skills and getting our students more prepared, which especially to me resonates considering Minnesota's reputation for how educated and skilled our workforce is. And so this I could see really feeding into that, really offering every student an opportunity for summer jobs or internships or what have you. So is there work being done, or could you, if not, could we get a bigger sense of that whole picture, all the efforts out there of the different organizations? Because I know you mentioned these small youth serving agencies that are out there. So we have all these different groups, and how can we really see how they're playing together into this bigger picture, where the gaps might be, and what we as a city council and our other partners too, what we can all do together to really be strategic about our investments there and try to spend our dollars on the front end for positive good in the community, rather on the back end once somebody's committing a crime or reacting to a situation where we're trying to make up for a cost.
Absolutely. We know that employment is a critical component of helping young people to be successful as far as avoiding violence, but also just continuing their capacity to grow and build as young adults. And so, as you said, we do have Step Up. We're working closely with our Parks Department to look at how they can continue to grow their employment programs. And so it is something that's on the horizon. We know that we need to, again, spend more of our time focused on that 18 to 24-year-old demographic, and obviously employment is critically important to them. And so I wouldn't say that we necessarily have a strategic plan in place about employment, but I know that it is something that we'll be looking at and trying to figure out how to better incorporate. It's a wonderful resource that we have with the National Forum, because Chicago is one of our member cities, as is Boston, and both of them have done really tremendous work around youth employment. And so now that we're sort of in the full swing of things, it'll give us the opportunity to talk more with them about what they've done and how they've grown that, and possibly the opportunity to mirror some of their efforts.
Well, that's very exciting. And I think that there's so many different players in this field, so it'd be great to see how they all work together and how we can better work together and coordinate on these efforts.
Absolutely. Thank you.
For youth. Thank you.
Something on the employment, members of the committee, Mr. Chair. Mm-hmm. One area we have noticed a deficit in, I think our Step Up program is, there's no peer to it anywhere in the country. When we go places, people are just amazed at our Step Up program. So I think we have a tremendous base we need to recognize. And sometimes when you see massive changes in another community, it's because they're building on nothing, and we have already got quite a bit. So I think that's something to think about. But one thing we noticed, that Step Up is for a certain, you have to have a certain motivation and a certain age and a certain capacity. And so we did recognize that there was a void for people who were, say, gang affiliated and really needed help to come into the work environment. And so we worked with Emerge and METP and created the North 4 program, which is an employment program for gang affiliated youth, which we've seen really good results. Primarily, participants have not been shot, but many of them have also gotten work. And when we have done programs like the BUILD program, which is a gang prevention program, Sasha mentioned one of our micro grants was the Build Leader program, and what we found was the next generation up, the young adults, really were attracted to the opportunity to show their value to the community, their ability to give back, and also to have that be a paid opportunity. And so we've woven employment into many of the programs that we're doing as well. So while Sasha identified that there continues to be a great need out there to do even more, I think we have a really good base, and we've tried to identify those chinks in the wall and try and fill them in.
Well, thank you. I think it's such important work within our city, and hopefully we can identify more opportunities. I look at all the great work of our local business associations going on. I think that frankly, there's probably a lot of small businesses as well that if they had a clearer direction or ability or pipeline to help out in that capacity and maybe to take some youth on after school and teach them skills and get a little help around their stores or their shops or their services that they're providing, they would be very receptive to that. And so we have a huge business community to leverage as well. And it's exciting. So I look forward to seeing more progress in this work. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions? All right, well, thank you so much, Council and Council Chair. We appreciate your time and look forward to giving a future update.
Yeah, I did want to note that in the Blueprint Restorative Justice is highlighted a couple different times and programs, and there's also a whole section on employment opportunities and training in there. So you're right on track with some of the intentions that were in there, and when we refreshed the blueprint in last year.
2012?
Yeah.
Or 2013, excuse me, 2013.
Yeah. Those, we definitely carried those forward too. So I'm really glad that you brought those up. I do want to just go back to one thing. If we could see the slide on the homicides. And I know that this is slightly different than the results Minneapolis report, and I'm not exactly sure. But 2013 was a pretty big deal for us. When we were looking at back in 2006 and 7 and 8, and we kept talking about what should the goal be, what should our goal be, and how could we have some markers and indicators, and we definitely thought that we should look at homicides. And when we talked about having 0 juvenile homicides, we thought, well, maybe we shouldn't even say that because that's just never really going to happen probably. Is that even attainable? And we proved for 1 year that it was attainable. And we did get to 0. Now we didn't get to 0 for the 18 to 24-year-olds, which you pointed out. But I think the fact that we got to 0 with our under 18 should tell us all that we can definitely get to 0 with the 24 and under. And we just have to keep working at it. A lot of these lines are trending in the right direction. I know there's lots of ups and downs, and we all wonder why we can't predict and control what's happening better. There's so many variables out there we can't control. But we're hopefully getting better and better at figuring out what we can control and zeroing in. I know we've got some innovative stuff that we're working on. How do I help identify those kids that are most at risk and reach out and get them the support and help that they need before there's big problems? And I'm hopeful. It only will help us if more council members can get involved and engaged and interested in this activity and what we're doing. So as you have ideas, and if you have more ideas, feel free to contact our staff or meet with them or me. I'm the council's representative on the Youth Violence Prevention Executive Committee. Hopefully, as part of this action, I'll be appointed again for another 2-year term on that. And so maybe we'll move on to the motions to receive and file then, and also to appoint the members for the next 2 years. These are all mayoral appointments, but the council approves them, and they are in the agenda. I'm curious if anybody is actually here today from the applicants, because I know that they knew the meeting was coming up. Just to acknowledge, no. Okay, any Youth Violence Prevention Executive Committee members here today? Okay. Well, I'll read through the names anyway, and then I'll move to receive and file and appoint them. There's Fred Bryan, Philip Cunningham, Chief John Harrington, Isaiah Hudson, Robert Lilligren, David Matthews, Nick Williams. Those are new appointees, and then the reappointments of Tracine Ashbury from the public schools, to Leo Vidieco, Eloisa Escavez, Cam Gordon, Barbara McMorris, Eugene Roland Carpitan, BJ Smith, Daryl Young, and Shane Zane. Any questions on the motion to receive and file and approve those appointments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. And that motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I believe that concludes our meeting for today. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This meeting is adjourned.